And hello again, and here we are back in my garage, and for a change we won't be looking at my Kawasaki Z650 1170 project, because it's got to the point now where I haven't got much else to do. I'm waiting for the bodywork to return from Mark the painter, and that will happen until, well, mid-December at the earliest, so that gives me about a month of, well, spare time if you like, to work on something else. And the something else is my Guzzi project here, which is by far my longest running project. I've not touched it for at least, I don't know, 6 months, and the last time we saw it I had the seat reupholstered just the way I wanted. I got it on the bike and I didn't like the result, it wasn't quite right, so the seat had to go back to Anthony, the upholsterer, who redid it. It took him about, I don't know, 7 or 8 weeks because he's so busy. Got it back and it just sat here sort of unfitted for, I don't know, months and months. So I've now fitted the seat, we can move the camera in a moment and see that, and I must say it's a lot better. I'm much happier with the new seat. Yeah, so that's good. Next thing I want to do is I need to remake, or I say remake, but change slightly the rear seat mount on the frame, because now with the new seat in place things need to be changed slightly in that area. Not too difficult, I think I've just got to drill some holes and get it mounted just right, and then I'm going to take all the bodywork off and finally get stuck into the wiring. Like my Kawasaki here, and my Norley, and my other Harley, this bike uses the Moto Gadget M-Unit, so I'm getting quite familiar with the way it works, so I hope it won't take too long. Just of course a question mark that I mentioned a few weeks ago when I talked about the Guzzi, and that's what to do about this lithium-ion battery. The battery tray is made just to take this one. I'm not sure if it's the right solution because they don't seem to be very reliable, and well, the charging system on my bike is made by a company called Saprissa, Italian company, and it turns out it's the one that you don't want to have because it's very unreliable apparently, and fitting modern lithium batteries on this kind of old tech doesn't always end well, so I'm not sure what to do about that. But that won't stop me from continuing with the work on the wiring. I can still wire the bike up and fit a battery off the bike just to make sure everything works and the bike fires up, maybe, who knows, and then we'll worry about what particular battery or how it gets fitted later on. Yeah, so that's what's next. It's getting quite late now, so we'll carry on it tomorrow without all this bodywork in place, and we'll crack on with the wiring. And so now here we are the next day, and I've just finished modifying this rear seat mount so the seat now sits just right on the bike. So with that done, I can now remove the seat and the tank and make a start on the electrics. And so with the seat and tank removed and put somewhere very safe, I can now make a start on the wiring. Now, as you can see, there are wires everywhere here, sort of here and here and here, snaking back and two. But also you can see there's still a lot more to do. There's plenty of loose connections everywhere. So I've got to remind myself what I was doing about a year ago when I stopped working on the bike, and then we can catch up and continue with the wiring. And to help me with that task, I've got this ancient scroll here, which I drew out about 2 years ago now, I guess. And it's on an A3 bit of paper, and this is my homemade diagram for the wiring. I don't think you can see it because it's too wide. It's got a few cut marks on it, some mud marks of tea, but never mind. Yeah, so that should remind me what I have to do. It's got the colours on it and what's happening with the M-Unit and so on. So yeah, let's study that. In fact, this is from March 2020, which is the last time I sort of did any work on the wiring of the bike. So yeah, plenty to catch up on and get the bike fully wired up, and who knows, even running before the year end, but we'll see. And now here we are, it's the next day, and I've rolled the bike out of the garage for the first time in, well, a very long time. And I must say it's not looking too good. The chrome's a bit tarnished, the aluminium's getting a bit dull, so it does need a good clean. Anyway, what I thought I'd do today is go through the basic wiring architecture on the bike and go through what needs to happen to get this wiring all finished and the bike starting for the first time. And so starting at the front of the bike, got the headlamp, which consists of main beam and dips, and that's it. That requires 3 wires, 1 power for the main, 1 power for the dip, and an earth for both. That's quite simple. We've got here the ignition. This is actually made for a Harley, but I like these things. A barrel key here, like that. Again, just need 2 wires for that, which go from here right back to the M-Unit in the middle of the bike. Got the speedo here, that's pretty straightforward. What I do need to have yet though is a sensor for the speedo, which will attach to the lower fork and take a reading from magnet on the front disc. Haven't got that yet. I did have one, but I used it on something else. Idiot light here, little pod here, 4 or 5 different lights. One important point is that I also have these M-Unit switches here, these micro switches here, 3 either side, and these are quite clever. These are called momentary contact switches. And what that means is that in conjunction with the M-Unit, that one switch can do more than one job. And so, for example, one switch can operate the headlamp, and what it can do is you press it once, turn on the dipped, press it again, you get the main beam, press it again, you get the dipped, and if you keep it pressed in for 2 seconds, it kills the lights. So that's quite clever, and that's something that can happen when you're using the so-called momentary contact switches with the M-Unit. Without the M-Unit, it wouldn't work. So moving on then, we've also got the wiring for the ignition. This is where I might come unstuck, because this bike is one of the last Moto Guzzis that still uses points ignition, and indeed a distributor right here. I think a year or two later we switched over to a fully electronic system with fuel injection. Whereas this bike's one of the last ones which uses that old-fashioned points, which I'm not too familiar with. I've never had a bike with a points ignition before. No, it's not true. I think I might have had an old Bentley or something, an old Honda back in the day, but never had to touch it, so not sure about that. The one thing that the M-Unit does not involve itself with and doesn't control is the charging system. So at the front of the bike here, in front of the engine, and this billet cover that we made, is the alternator that creates the charge, the voltage for the battery. That then goes to a rectifier regulator, which would normally sit behind the side panel here, but I've moved it to beneath the headstock here, where it's out in the wind. I did that because A, it's out there out of harm's way, and it's got plenty of cool air, because rectifiers like cool air, and also because of course I don't have any side panels anymore. So yeah, so I've got to run the wiring from all the way over there to all the way here to the battery. At the back here I've got the rear lamp, this thing here, its own little billet cover, and that's the rear lamp, the brake light, and also the light for the license plate at the back. That shouldn't be a problem, just got 3 wires there, you know. 1 power wire for the rear lamp, 1 power for the brake, and an earth, so that's pretty straightforward. Now, I have covered the wiring up of an M-Unit before. I've done it on my 1170 project, so no point going into all that in some detail. And indeed, there are plenty of really good YouTube videos about how to wire up a Moto Gadget M-Unit. There are 2 kinds, the basic and the blue. I've gone for the basic, as I always do on the different bikes, because the blue version gives you additional functionality which I don't really need. It allows you to control it via your phone, which I don't really need, so we'll do without that. Yeah, so that's it really. I'm trying to think of what else we have to wire up. Of course, it's got things like the switches for the brake. Got a switch here and a switch on the rear brake, I'll sort that out. And indeed, for the rear brake, I'm using an inline switch, so it's part of the banjo bolt, which bolts on the brake line at the back there. I've not got one yet, but we'll get one and that should be okay. So yeah, basically all I've got to do is run all the wires from the front of the bike to the centre and sort out the charging system, sort out the ignition, and it's pretty straightforward really. Well, in theory. What else? Oh yes, one basic thing I always do is run all the main wires for the bike along the left hand side of the frame here. That's because when the bike's stationary, it always leans over on the left, so if you had any big fat cables coming this way, they're very noticeable as you walk around the bike. If you run them on the left hand side, it's leaning down, you don't tend to notice it quite so much, so that's why you should always run the wires on the left hand side. Oh yes, we've also got of course the starter motor system. That's got its own solenoid, that's fine. The funny thing about that is we use really thick wires for that, big thick cables to carry the juice down, because the starter motor takes the most power of any element on the bike. So that's not a problem. I think I've already actually done that. Yeah, I've already got the wiring here. Yes, that's it really. This could be a bit clean actually, it's looking very sad for itself, as you can't tell over there, but yeah, things are not looking too good at the moment. Bit of corrosion on these alloy covers and so on. But yeah, we'll clean that up at some point, but right now I need to get on and get the wiring done. Now I have covered wiring quite recently on the Kawasaki Z1170 project, so if you're into Guzzis and you want to know about the wiring on here, first of all, kind of have a look at the last few videos I made about the wiring on the 1170, and it'll take you through the whole process, particularly with the M-Unit. But anyway, so now I'll push it back in again, go and get myself a cup of tea, and I'll make a start on wiring up the bike. And so now here we are, back in my cramped garage. I was tempted to leave the bike outside, but I think it's just starting to rain, so we'll have to bring it indoors and work in this very cramped space. So what I'm doing now is I'm just doing some tests on the wiring that I've got to make sure that what I've written down on my diagram is correct, because it's been 2 or 3 years now, and who knows, things have changed or maybe I've written it down wrong. So what I've got here is the main lead from the headlamp. I've got 3 wires, brown, black and green, and pretty sure black is going to be earth, so brown and green is going to be high beam and low beam. Just want to make sure that I've got them the right way round. So to test it, I've got a little battery here, my little test battery, which is very, very helpful. And somewhere I've got another, so I've fixed up the positive side on the brown, and I think negative goes to black, hopefully so anyway. So when I touch this now, the little headlamp should come on. Let's see. Yeah, there you go. Now I can't tell from here if that's high beam or low beam, so let me just do that again to make sure. Okay, I can sort of, I think that's high beam, I'm not quite sure. So now we'll remove that positive from the brown and move it onto the green here. Yeah, that is low beam, so now know green's low, brown's high, so I can now get these 3 wires wired up on the M-Unit. Okay, so here we have the M-Unit, and here are the output ports for the various functions on the bike. And in my hand here I've got a blue wire which powers the horn. Now it turns out that this goes in the 5th hole of this port, so we go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So to lock it in place I need to push down this little orange button. It's quite tricky to actually push, so I'll use anything I can find just to push it down, and then that goes in there, let it go and it locks in place. And so now we have the green wire for the low beam, the brown wire for the high beam, we've got the blue wire here for the horn, and we've got the earth here for the high beam and low beam, and that'll just bolt down somewhere on the frame or on this tray, since the tray is also earth, so that's fine. Right now these are a little bit out of sync. I think maybe this blue wire could have been a bit longer maybe, so we can follow this line of the wires, or maybe I can shorten down the brown and the green and make it flow with the blue wire. But we'll leave that for now because there's still plenty of wires to add, and who knows, I might need to change things as I do that. And now here we are, it's getting late, and I've got about 3 hours into the wiring so far. And what I'm doing right now is I've got a test battery, which I've jury-rigged onto the M-Unit, so I can convince it to turn on, and think the ignition key's turned, and hopefully everything will light up. You can't see it there, but if I now activate the M-Unit, like this, yeah, everything now lights up, and that means that because I've now wired in all the buttons here, we should get some activity from the switchgear. So I have to know that that button there is a horn. Okay, that works fine. And this side we've got the top button is the high beam, low beam, so let's try that one. Yeah, there you go, there's the low beam. Press again for high, keep it pressed in for 2 seconds, and it goes off, so that all works. The other 2 are for the indicators. I've only got the back ones on so far. Let's see if they work. It should be the right, I think. Well, there you go, left rather. I got that wrong. I can change that. Press again to stop. And the other one, yeah, that works too. That's great. Now I would like to try hitting the starter motor now, the starter button on this side, but I won't do that just in case. It might be in gear or something, I'm not quite sure yet, so that'll have to wait. The other one's a kill switch, that doesn't really do anything at the moment. Yes, overall, so far so good, and as I say, I've got about 3 hours so far on the bike, and yeah, it's actually quite slow. It's a slow process, just trying things out, and so far, if I look over here now, you can't really see it, but it's a bit of a rat's nest of wires, a little bit too short, maybe a bit too long here and there. I don't really care at the moment because I just want to make sure it works, and so when it all works I can then tidy it up, shorten some wires, group them together and just make it all look a bit neater. Anyway, that's it for today, so come back tomorrow or whenever I've got time and we'll carry on with the wiring.